The morning sun cast long shadows across the marble floors of the Galactic Council chambers as Ambassador Trell reviewed the latest application for membership. His 4 eyes scanned the documents while his assistant prepared the standard evaluation protocols. Another species seeking to join the peaceful alliance that had kept the galaxy stable for 3,000 years. Humans, he muttered, pronouncing the word carefully. The species had only recently discovered faster-than-light travel, a remarkable achievement that had caught the attention of Council Scouts. Their homeworld, Earth, appeared to be a standard garden planet with abundant water and moderate temperatures, perfect conditions for a civilization of peaceful scholars. Trell's species, the Valdari, had been evaluating new civilizations for centuries. The process was simple and routine. Every species underwent a military assessment to determine their role in galactic defense. Most ended up as scholars, contributing research and logistic support. A few became guardians, capable of defensive operations. Only 3 species in galactic history had achieved warrior status, and they were revered as the protectors of peace. The humans have agreed to the evaluation, his assistant reported, her voice carrying the musical tones typical of their species. They seem eager to demonstrate their capabilities. Trell nodded approvingly. Enthusiasm was always a good sign. Species that were confident in their peaceful nature usually made excellent additions to the council. He pulled up the preliminary reports from the scout ships. Earth showed no signs of major conflicts, no massive military installations, no weapons of mass destruction pointed at neighboring worlds. The humans had even included what they called cultural exchange materials with their application. The videos showed humans engaged in various activities. Children playing in parks, scientists working in laboratories, artists creating beautiful works. There were some concerning images of what appeared to be competitive physical activities, but Trell dismissed them as harmless, recreational pursuits. Every species had their games. Schedule our departure for tomorrow, Trell instructed. This should be a straightforward evaluation. The humans appear to be natural scholars, perhaps guardians if their defensive capabilities are adequate. The journey to Earth took 3 standard galactic days. Trell used the time to study human culture and language. Their communication methods were primitive but functional. They had multiple languages across their single planet, which suggested a species that valued diversity over efficiency, another positive sign. As their evaluation ship entered Earth's solar system, Trell was impressed by the orderly arrangement of space stations and the careful traffic control systems the humans had established. They clearly understood the importance of organization and safety. The planet itself was beautiful, with swirling white clouds over blue oceans and green land masses. A perfect world for a peaceful civilization. The human delegation that greeted them at the space station was led by a woman who introduced herself as Dr. Yuki, their liaison for scientific and cultural exchange. She was smaller than Trell had expected, but her manner was warm and welcoming. The translator devices worked perfectly, allowing smooth communication. "We are honored by your visit," Dr. Yuki said, bowing slightly in what Trell recognized as a gesture of respect. "We have prepared demonstrations of our capabilities as requested by the Council protocols." "Excellent," Trell replied, returning the bow. "We look forward to observing your military training procedures. Based on our preliminary assessment, we expect to classify your species as scholars, with possible guardian status depending on your defensive preparations." Dr. Yuki's expression changed slightly, and Trell noticed what appeared to be surprise or perhaps amusement. "I think you'll find our approach to military training quite comprehensive," she said. "We've arranged for you to observe what we call basic training at one of our primary facilities." Trell felt confident as they traveled to the surface. The landscape was peaceful, with neat farms and small cities connected by efficient transportation networks. There were no massive fortress walls, no weapon emplacements, no signs of a militaristic society. The humans clearly understood that. True strength came from knowledge and cooperation, not from violence. The military facility they visited was clean and organized. Rows of simple buildings surrounded a central area with various training equipment. Trell saw obstacle courses that looked like playgrounds, classroom buildings for instruction, and what appeared to be recreational fields. Everything suggested a civilized approach to defense training. Your evaluation protocols call for observing a typical training cycle, Dr. Yuki explained as they walked toward the main building. We've arranged for you to witness the beginning of a standard 12-week program. 12 weeks? Trell was impressed. Most species required only 2 or 3 weeks to learn basic defensive procedures. The humans were clearly thorough in their approach to education. They were introduced to Colonel Reed, a human with graying hair and a calm demeanor who would serve as their guide. He explained that new recruits arrived regularly and underwent comprehensive preparation for their defensive roles. The process included physical conditioning, tactical instruction, and team-building exercises. We believe in preparing our people thoroughly, Colonel Reed said. The training can be challenging, but it's necessary to ensure they're ready for their duties. Trell appreciated the human commitment to proper preparation. The Valdari had similar programs, though theirs focused more on meditation and conflict resolution than physical training. Every species had their own approach to maintaining peace. As they prepared to observe the first day of training, Trell felt confident in his assessment. The humans showed all the signs of a mature, peaceful civilization. Their training facility was well organized, their leaders were thoughtful and calm, and their approach emphasized preparation over aggression. They would make excellent scholars, contributing their obvious intelligence and organizational skills to the greater galactic community. The recruits will be arriving shortly, Colonel Reed announced, checking a timepiece on his wrist. I should warn you that the first day can be somewhat intense as we establish expectations and begin the conditioning process. Trell nodded, understanding. Every educational program had its challenging moments. He settled into the observation area with his evaluation team, recording devices ready to document humanity's peaceful approach to defense training. The morning sun was climbing higher, promising a pleasant day for observing civilized military instruction. In the distance, he could hear the sound of vehicles approaching, bringing the new recruits who would demonstrate humanity's commitment to scholarly defense. Trell prepared his notes, expecting to witness classroom instruction and light physical exercises. The evaluation would probably be completed by midday, leaving time for cultural exchange and formal documentation of humanity's scholar status. The sound of the approaching vehicles grew louder, and Trell smiled at the efficiency of human logistics. This was going to be a routine and pleasant evaluation of another peaceful species ready to join the galactic community. The buses rolled to a stop with a screech of brakes that made Trell's sensitive hearing receptors flinch. Through the reinforced windows, he could see young humans sitting quietly, many appearing nervous but determined. They looked like typical students preparing for an educational experience. Trell adjusted his recording equipment and prepared to document what he expected would be a civilized orientation process. The bus doors opened with a mechanical hiss. For a moment, there was silence. Then a human male, in a perfectly pressed uniform, stepped into view and opened his mouth to produce a sound that made every alien observer jump in terror. "Get off my bus right now! Move, move, move! You have 30 seconds to get your sorry bodies in formation, or you'll be doing push-ups until the sun dies." The volume of the human's voice was beyond anything Trell had ever experienced. On his home world, such sounds only occurred during natural disasters or emergency evacuations. The students poured out of the buses in apparent panic while the uniformed human continued his assault on their hearing. "What are you looking at? Did I say you could look around? Eyes forward, shoulders back. If I wanted you to think, I would have given you permission." Trell's recording equipment was registering sound levels that would cause permanent damage to Valdari hearing organs. He looked at Colonel Reed in alarm, but the human appeared completely calm, as if nothing unusual was happening. "That's Drill, Instructor Davis," Reed explained quietly. "He's one of our best, very effective at establishing the proper training environment." The human students had somehow arranged themselves in neat rows while continuing to be subjected to the deafening verbal assault. Trell noticed that several appeared to be trembling, which he recognized as a normal fear response. Yet none of them fled or requested assistance. Were they too terrified to move? "Welcome to the next 12 weeks of your miserable existence," Davis roared at the formation. "For the next 3 months, your life belongs to me. You will eat when I say eat, sleep when I say sleep, and breathe when I give you permission." Trell's assistant was frantically taking notes, documenting what appeared to be a clear case of psychological torture. On every civilized world, such treatment of students would result in immediate intervention by mental health authorities. "This is highly irregular," Trell whispered to Reed. "The volume levels alone could cause permanent hearing damage. Are you certain this is standard educational procedure?" Reed nodded calmly. "This is just the beginning. They need to learn to function under stress." The demonstration continued for what felt like hours but was probably only minutes. Davis subjected the students to a series of increasingly bizarre demands. They were required to respond to questions with ear-splitting shouts of their own, perform rapid physical movements in perfect synchronization, and maintain rigid postures that looked extremely uncomfortable. "Drop and give me 20, Davis screamed at one student who had apparently committed some invisible infraction. Trell watched in horror as the human immediately fell to the ground and began rapidly lowering and raising his body, using only his arms for support. The movement looked painful and exhausting, yet the student performed it without complaint while Davis continued screaming criticism. "Is that the best you can do? My grandmother could do better push-ups and she's been dead for 10 years. Surrounding, other students maintained their positions, staring straight ahead while their companions struggled through the physical punishment. Trell couldn't understand why no one was intervening to stop the abuse. "Colonel Reed," he said urgently, "I must protest this treatment. These students appear to be suffering psychological trauma. This level of verbal aggression would be considered criminal assault on most civilized worlds." Reed looked puzzled. "They're just learning discipline. This is completely standard for the first day." "First day?" Trell's voice cracked. "You mean this becomes worse?" "Oh, this is nothing," Reed replied cheerfully. "Wait until they start the actual physical training tomorrow. Today is just introductions and getting them settled in." Before Trell could respond, Davis had moved the formation to what he called the obstacle course. The alien observers followed, their recording equipment capturing every moment of what they were certain would be remembered as evidence of systematic torture. The obstacle course consisted of a series of structures that looked designed to injure or kill. There were walls too high to climb, pits filled with mud and water, sections of wire stretched low to the ground, and rope constructions that swayed dangerously in the wind. "This is where you will learn if you have what it takes," Davis announced. "You will crawl through mud. You will climb walls. You will push your bodies beyond their limits." As if to demonstrate, several uniformed humans who were apparently instructors began running through the course. They threw themselves under the wire sections, dragging their bodies through mud while explosions detonated nearby, creating clouds of smoke and debris. Trell's recording equipment registered the explosive charges, and his emergency protocols automatically activated. "Take cover," he shouted to his team. "We're under attack." But the humans appeared completely unconcerned by the explosions. The instructors continued crawling through the mud while pieces of dirt and debris rained down on them. Some were actually laughing. "It's just training ammunition," Reed explained, helping Trell to his feet. "Perfectly safe. Well, mostly safe. We only lose a few recruits each year to training accidents." "You lose recruits?" Trell stared at the human in disbelief. "Students die during this process?" "Rarely," Reed assured him. "Our safety record has improved significantly over the past decade." The demonstration continued with the instructors showing the students how to navigate each obstacle. They climbed walls using only their hands and feet, swung across gaps on ropes, and completed the mud crawl while explosions continued to detonate around them. The students watched with expressions that Trell couldn't interpret. They didn't appear terrified, which suggested they might already be in shock. "Tomorrow you will all complete this course," Davis announced. "Those who fail will repeat it until they succeed or until they quit. Quitters will be marked as failures for the rest of their lives." Trell was frantically updating his evaluation notes. This was beyond anything in council experience. The humans were subjecting their own people to conditions that violated every galactic convention on the treatment of sentient beings. Yet, Colonel, Reed and the other officials acted as if it was perfectly normal. As the first day concluded, the students were marched to dormitory buildings, where they would apparently sleep on narrow beds with minimal comfort. They were given 15 minutes to consume what the humans called dinner, though the portions looked insufficient for proper nutrition. Tomorrow we begin physical conditioning, Reed informed the alien observers. The real training starts then. Trell spent the evening reviewing his recordings and trying to understand what he had witnessed. His evaluation protocols had no framework for this type of behavior. The humans were either conducting systematic torture of their own population, or they had a completely different understanding of acceptable treatment than the rest of galactic civilization. He sent an emergency transmission to the Council, requesting guidance on how to proceed. The response came back within hours. Continue observation and document everything. The Council needed to understand the full extent of human military culture before making any decisions about membership. As Trell prepared for sleep in his comfortable quarters, he could hear sounds coming from the human dormitories. Voices raised, in what sounded like conversation, occasionally interrupted by laughter. Were the students actually enjoying their ordeal? The possibility was too disturbing to contemplate. Tomorrow would bring what the humans called physical conditioning. Trell could only imagine what horrors that might involve. His species had never encountered anything like this in 3,000 years of galactic civilization. The humans were either the most savage species ever discovered, or they operated on principles so alien that peaceful coexistence might be impossible. Dr. Yuki found Trell pacing nervously in the observation lounge at dawn, his four eyes darting between his recording equipment and the training field where human students were already running in formation. The alien ambassador had barely slept, spending most of the night reviewing footage and trying to make sense of what he'd witnessed. Ambassador Trell, Dr. Yuki said gently, I thought you might benefit from understanding the context behind our training methods. Would you like to see more of our world? Trell looked up eagerly. Perhaps away from the training facility he could observe normal human behavior and better understand their civilization. Yes, that would be most helpful. I'm having difficulty reconciling what I've observed with the peaceful society described in your council application. Dr. Yuki smiled in a way that Trell was beginning to recognize as distinctly human. I think a tour of our planet will provide valuable perspective. We'll start with something gentle. They traveled by aircraft to a region Dr. Yuki called a national park. Trell was initially relieved by the peaceful landscape of trees and mountains. This looked more like what he expected from a civilized world. Birds sang in the branches and small creatures moved through the underbrush. Finally, evidence of humanity's harmony with nature. This is beautiful, Trell commented, adjusting his recording equipment to capture the serene environment. This represents the true character of your species much better than yesterday's disturbing display. I'm glad you think so, Dr. Yuki replied. Let me introduce you to some of our local wildlife. She led him down a trail to a viewing area where a large brown creature was visible in the distance. It appeared to be peacefully eating vegetation, completely ignoring the humans, watching from behind a safety barrier. That's what we call a grizzly bear, Dr. Yuki explained. They're one of our larger predators. Predators? Trell asked. But it's eating plants. Bears are omnivores. They eat both plants and meat. An adult grizzly can weigh over 800 pounds and run faster than our vehicles. Their claws can tear through metal and their bite force can crush bones. Trell stared at the creature with growing alarm. It looked like a living weapon covered in fur. This creature hunts other animals for food? When it needs to, yes. Bears will hunt fish, smaller mammals, and sometimes larger prey if they're hungry. Enough. They've been known to break into human dwellings looking for food. And you allow these creatures to exist near your population centers? Dr. Yuki looked confused. Of course, they're part of our ecosystem. We've learned to coexist with them. Trell was frantically updating his notes. A civilized species would have eliminated such dangerous predators or relocated them to controlled environments. The humans apparently lived alongside creatures that could kill them without warning. Their next stop was a coastal area where Dr. Yuki wanted to show him marine life. Trell expected to see the equivalent of the gentle fish that inhabited Valdari oceans. Instead, he found himself staring at an underwater predator that defied comprehension. "That's a great white shark," Dr. Yuki said proudly, pointing to a massive creature visible through the clear water. "They can grow over 20 feet long and have multiple rows of razor-sharp teeth, perfect hunting machines that have remained unchanged for millions of years." The shark moved through the water with fluid grace, but Trell could see the rows of teeth Dr. Yuki mentioned. They looked designed for tearing flesh from bone. "These creatures attack humans. Sometimes. Shark attacks are rare, but they do happen. Mostly they hunt seals and fish, but humans swimming or surfing can sometimes be mistaken for prey." "And you still allow your people to enter the water?" "Swimming and surfing are popular recreational activities. The risk is minimal if you take proper precautions." Trell couldn't understand how any species could consider entering water inhabited by such creatures as recreation. On his homeworld, even the suggestion would cause mass panic. The tour continued with increasingly disturbing revelations. Dr. Yuki showed him creatures called wolves that hunted in organized packs, venomous snakes that could kill with a single bite, and spiders whose toxins could cause paralysis and death. Every environment they visited seemed designed to kill the unwary. "How do you survive on this world?" Trell finally asked, his voice tight with stress. "Survive?" Dr. Yuki looked genuinely puzzled. "We don't just survive. We thrive. Humans are the dominant species on Earth. We've learned to adapt to every environment. But you're surrounded by predators that could kill you without warning. That's why we developed tools, intelligence, and cooperation. Our ancestors learned to hunt the predators before they could be hunted. We became apex predators ourselves." The words hit Trell like a physical blow. Apex predators. The humans weren't prey animals learning to defend themselves. They were predators who had learned to hunt everything else on their world. Dr. Yuki continued the revelation by showing him weather data from the past year. Trell watched satellite footage of massive storm systems that could level cities, earthquakes that split the ground open, volcanic eruptions that destroyed entire regions, and hurricanes that carried the force of multiple nuclear weapons. "Your planet is trying to kill you," Trell whispered, staring at images of destruction that would have ended civilization on any normal world. "Sometimes it feels that way," Dr. Yuki agreed cheerfully. "But we've learned to predict and prepare for most natural disasters. Hurricane season keeps us on our toes, but we've gotten pretty good at evacuation procedures." "Hurricane season? This happens regularly?" "Every year. We get tornadoes too, and forest fires and blizzards and droughts and floods. Earth keeps us busy." Trell realized he was looking at a world that would be classified as uninhabitable by Galactic Council standards. The combination of predators, natural disasters, and environmental hazards created conditions that no civilized species should be able to endure. Yet the humans had not only survived, but built a global civilization while contending with threats that would destroy most galactic species within a single generation. They had evolved in an environment where everything was trying to kill them, and they had responded by becoming better killers than anything else on their world. "Dr. Yuki," Trell said carefully, "what you showed me at the training facility yesterday, that wasn't torture, was it?" "Torture?" She looked genuinely surprised. "Of course not. That was just basic conditioning to help recruits adapt to stressful situations. They need to learn to function when things get difficult. But the physical punishment, the verbal aggression, the dangerous obstacles, are designed to prepare them for real combat situations where the stakes are life and death. We can't send people into danger without proper preparation. That wouldn't be ethical." Trell understood now why the human students hadn't fled in terror. To a species that had evolved dodging predators, surviving natural disasters, and competing for resources on a world that actively hostile to life, military training wasn't torture. It was just another day on Earth. "The recruits at the training facility," he said slowly, "they're not being broken down by abuse. They're being prepared for conditions that are normal for your species." "Exactly. We're teaching them to push past their comfort zones, work as a team under pressure, and never give up when things get tough. Those are essential survival skills." Trell stared out at the ocean where sharks circled beneath the surface while storm clouds gathered on the horizon. Somewhere in those clouds, enough energy was building to power his entire homeworld for a year, and the humans considered it normal weather. He began to understand that his evaluation protocols were completely inadequate for assessing humanity. The categories of scholar, guardian, and warrior had been created for species that evolved on safe worlds, where cooperation meant survival. The humans had evolved on a world where competition, adaptation, and relentless persistence were the only paths to survival. They weren't learning to become warriors. They already were warriors, every single one of them. Their military training wasn't creating soldiers from peaceful civilians. It was teaching apex predators how to be even more effective at what they already did naturally. As they returned to the training facility, Trell dreaded what he would observe next. If this was how humans prepared their young for normal life on Earth, what would their actual military training reveal? 12 weeks had passed since Trell first witnessed the horror of human military training. He had documented every day of what the humans casually called basic training, watching young civilians transform into something that defied his understanding of civilized behavior. Now he sat in the observation stands watching graduates prepare for their final exercise. The training facility had been transformed into something resembling a small city. Buildings, streets, vehicles, and even civilian areas had been constructed to create what Colonel Reed called an urban warfare simulation. Trell's recording equipment registered heat signatures from hidden positions throughout the mock city, suggesting this would be more than a simple graduation ceremony. "This is their final test," Reed explained to the alien observers. "They'll be divided into teams and given objectives to complete while under fire from instructor positions. It demonstrates their ability to work together under realistic combat conditions." Trell noted the phrase "under fire" with growing concern. "You mean they will be shot at with actual weapons?" "Training rounds," Reed assured him. "Non-lethal but painful. Hurts enough to encourage proper cover and movement techniques but won't cause permanent damage." The graduates had arrived before dawn, and Trell was shocked by their transformation. The nervous students he had watched 12 weeks ago had become something entirely different. They moved with fluid coordination, checking equipment and discussing tactics with the casual efficiency of professionals. Their eyes constantly scanned for threats, and they maintained perfect situational awareness, even during casual conversation. Blue. "Team, you have 30 minutes to secure the communication center and establish contact with command," came the announcement over loudspeakers. "Red team, prevent them from completing their mission. Exercise begins now." What followed was unlike anything in Trell's experience or imagination. The humans moved through the mock city like water flowing around obstacles, using every piece of cover and concealment with instinctive skill. They communicated through hand signals and brief whispers, coordinating complex movements without seeming to discuss them. The sound of gunfire erupted from multiple positions as instructors engaged the advancing teams. Trell watched in fascination and horror as humans were struck by training rounds, staggered, and continued their mission without pause. Injuries that would incapacitate most galactic species were treated as minor inconveniences. "Contact left," one graduate shouted, and his entire team immediately responded. Some provided covering fire while others maneuvered to flanking positions. They moved with precision that suggested thousands of hours of practice, but Trell knew they had only been training for 12 weeks. A human female took a training round to the shoulder that spun her around and left her gasping. Instead of seeking medical attention, she adjusted her position, acquired a new target, and continued engaging the enemy. Her teammates didn't pause to help her because they knew she didn't need help. "Remarkable pain tolerance," Trell noted in his records. "Individual continues mission effectiveness despite injury that would require immediate evacuation for most species." The exercise involved multiple objectives scattered throughout the city. Teams had to clear buildings, rescue simulated hostages, disable enemy equipment, and establish defensive positions, all while under continuous fire from instructors positioned in hidden locations. Trell watched one team approach a building known to contain enemy positions. Instead of the cautious approach he expected, they coordinated a simultaneous assault from multiple directions. Explosions and gunfire filled the air as they systematically cleared each room, moving with brutal efficiency that left no hiding. Place unchecked. How do they coordinate so effectively? Trell asked Reed. They seem to anticipate each other's actions. Team cohesion, Reed replied proudly. They've learned to think as a unit. Each member knows their role and trusts their teammates to perform theirs. The trust Reed mentioned was demonstrated repeatedly throughout the exercise. Humans would expose themselves to enemy fire to provide cover for teammates, confident that their sacrifice would not be wasted. They shared ammunition, covered wounded comrades, and made decisions that prioritized mission success over individual safety. But what disturbed Trell most was not their efficiency or their coordination. It was the fact that they were clearly enjoying themselves. Between firefights, he could hear laughter. When teams successfully completed difficult objectives, they celebrated with obvious satisfaction. These weren't soldiers grimly enduring necessary hardship. They were competitors engaged in their favorite sport. Building secured, came a triumphant shout from one team that had just cleared a structure defended by 3 instructor positions. The team members were breathing heavily, covered in dust and sweat and grinning with pure joy. The final phase of the exercise involved all teams converging on a central objective, while instructor forces attempted to prevent them from reaching it. Trell watched with growing amazement as the humans coordinated a complex assault involving simultaneous attacks from multiple directions, supporting fires, and diversionary actions. The noise was incredible. Explosions, gunfire, shouting voices, and the sounds of running feet created a chaos that should have paralyzed any thinking being. Instead, the humans thrived in it. They processed information, made decisions, and executed complex maneuvers while surrounded by simulated battle conditions. Smoke. Out! Someone shouted, and gray clouds suddenly obscured sections of the battlefield. The humans adapted instantly, using the concealment to advance while maintaining coordination through voice commands and predetermined actions. Trell watched one graduate take charge when his team leader was hit. Without pause or confusion, he assumed command and redirected the team's efforts to support the overall mission. The transition was seamless, suggesting they had all been trained to lead if necessary. The exercise concluded with all teams successfully completing their primary objectives despite heavy resistance from instructor forces. As the smoke cleared and the guns fell silent, Trell expected to see exhausted humans seeking medical attention and rest. Instead, he saw celebration. The graduates gathered in the center of the mock city, laughing and recounting the highlights of the exercise. They compared notes on tactics, discussed lessons learned, and praised each other's performance. Several were injured, but they wore their wounds like badges of honor. Outstanding performance, Colonel Reed announced to the assembled graduates. You have demonstrated the core values of teamwork, dedication, and mission accomplishment under adverse conditions. You are now prepared to serve your country and protect your fellow citizens. The humans responded with a roar of approval that made Trell's audio equipment overload. They had voluntarily subjected themselves to 12 weeks of conditions that would constitute torture on any civilized world, and they were celebrating their achievement. Colonel Reed, Trell said quietly, I need to understand something. These individuals chose to undergo this training? Absolutely. Military service is voluntary. They could leave at any time if they decided it wasn't for them. And they enjoy the experience? Reed smiled. They find it challenging and rewarding. Humans like to test themselves against difficult obstacles. Overcoming adversity gives us a sense of accomplishment. As the graduation ceremony concluded, Trell realized he was witnessing something unprecedented in galactic history. An entire species that had evolved to find satisfaction in overcoming the kind of challenges that would destroy other civilizations. The humans weren't being trained to become warriors. They were being trained to become better versions of what they already were naturally. The real question wasn't whether humanity belonged in the Galactic Council. The question was whether the rest of the galaxy was ready for humanity. Watching the graduates celebrate their achievement, Trell understood that his evaluation was complete. He had documented a species unlike anything in Council experience. Now he had to figure out how to explain it to a galaxy of peaceful civilizations. who had never encountered apex predators that thrived on adversity. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened 3 days after Trell's return, with representatives from every member species present either physically or through quantum communication links. The great chamber buzzed with anxious conversations, in dozens of languages, as species that had maintained peace for millennia prepared to discuss something that challenged their fundamental understanding of civilized behavior. Trell stood at the center of the chamber, his recording equipment connected to the main display systems. For the past 72 hours, council analysts had been reviewing his documentation of human military training, and the preliminary reports had caused unprecedented alarm among the leadership. Ambassador Trell, the council speaker announced, her crystalline voice carrying clearly through the chamber, please present your evaluation of the species requesting membership under the designation Humanity. The lights dimmed as Trell activated his presentation. The first images showed Earth from space, a beautiful blue and green world that looked perfectly suitable for peaceful civilization. Murmurs of approval rippled through the chamber as representatives noted the abundant water and moderate climate conditions. Initial assessment suggested a standard garden world species suitable for scholar classification, Trell began. However, detailed observation revealed circumstances requiring immediate council attention. The images changed to show the first day of human military training. The sound of drill instructor Davis screaming at recruits filled the chamber, causing several species to activate emergency hearing protection. Gasps of horror echoed from multiple sections as representatives watched young humans being subjected to what appeared to be systematic abuse. By all civilized standards, Trell continued, what you are observing constitutes torture. The volume, levels alone exceed safety thresholds for most species. Yet this is considered normal introductory training for human military personnel. A representative from the Keith Collective raised a trembling appendage. Ambassador Trell, surely this represents an extremist faction within human society. No civilized species could condone such treatment of their young. I believed the same initially, Trell replied, advancing to footage of the obstacle course. Training. The chamber fell silent as they watched humans crawling through mud under explosions, climbing walls with their bare hands, and completing physical challenges that would hospitalize most galactic citizens. The individuals undergoing this training are volunteers, Trell explained. They choose this experience and take pride in completing it successfully. What we consider torture, they consider character development. The Zephyrian ambassador stood up, his gossamer wings trembling with distress. This is barbaric. We must refuse membership to any species that practices such cruelty. Wait, Trell said, raising a hand. There is context that must be understood. The presentation shifted to his tour of Earth's environment. Images of grizzly bears, great white sharks, venomous snakes, and deadly storms filled the display. The chamber grew increasingly quiet as representatives absorbed the reality of humanity's homeworld. Earth is what classification protocols would term a deathworld, Trell announced. The humans evolved surrounded by predators that could kill them without warning, natural disasters that could destroy cities, and environmental conditions that would end most civilizations within a generation. A stunned silence filled the chamber. The concept of a species evolving to sentience on a death world was theoretical at best. Most council xenobiologists believed it was impossible for complex civilization to develop under such conditions. The training we observed, Trell continued, is not designed to break down peaceful civilians. It is designed to make natural apex predators more effective at what they already do instinctively. Every human is born with survival instincts that exceed our most elite warrior capabilities. The final segment of his presentation showed the graduation exercise. Council representatives watched in fascination and horror as humans moved through simulated combat with fluid coordination, treating injuries that would incapacitate most species as minor inconveniences and celebrating challenges that should have left them traumatized. They enjoy it, whispered the representative from New Harmony, her voice carrying clearly in the silent chamber. They actually enjoy the combat. Competition and conflict are fundamental to their psychology, Trell confirmed. Where we see torture, they see opportunity for growth. Where we see impossible challenges, they see entertainment. They have weaponized their own evolutionary trauma into a training methodology. The council speaker called for analysis from the War Xenopsychology Committee. Dr. Vorth of the Ethereal Collective materialized as a shimmering hologram, his energy patterns flickering with agitation. The implications are staggering, Dr. Vorth reported. Our psychological profiles suggest humans operate on completely different behavioral parameters than any known species. They form emotional bonds through shared adversity, develop leadership through crisis management, and achieve satisfaction through overcoming obstacles that would destroy normal minds. "What are you saying?" demanded the Keth Collective representative. "I'm saying they're not just different from us," Dr. Vorth replied. "They're different from everything we thought was possible. They've evolved cooperative behavior alongside competitive instincts, creating a species that can work together while simultaneously pushing each other to exceed all reasonable limits." The military analysis came next. General Thys of the warrior caste stood to address the chamber, her ceremonial armor gleaming under the chamber lights. As one of only 3 warrior species in galactic history, her words carried tremendous weight. "I have reviewed Ambassador Trell's documentation extensively," she announced. "The humans' basic training exceeds the combat capabilities of our most elite forces. What they call graduation requirements would qualify as advanced special operations training by our standards. That's impossible," protested the representative from the academic worlds. "No species could maintain such training standards across their entire military population." "Yet they do," General Thys replied grimly. "More disturbing is that this represents only their basic preparation. We have no data on their advanced training programs or their actual combat effectiveness." The debate that followed lasted for hours. Representatives struggled to understand how to classify a species that defied every category in their protocols. The humans had requested scholar status, but their capabilities exceeded warrior classification. They appeared peaceful in their intentions, but were clearly designed for warfare by their evolution. "We face an unprecedented decision," the council speaker finally announced. "Standard classification protocols are inadequate for this evaluation." The representative from the Peaceful Accord raised a concern that had been troubling many delegates. "If we grant them membership, what prevents them from using their capabilities against other council species? Their training suggests they could overwhelm our defensive capabilities with ease." "Because," Trell replied, activating a final segment of his recording, "their request for membership demonstrates their commitment to peaceful cooperation. They could have simply taken what they wanted. Instead, they're asking permission to join us." The image showed human spacecraft in orbit around Earth. Even to untrained observers, it was clear that human technology was more advanced than most council species possessed. They had developed faster-than-light travel independently, created defensive systems that could protect their world from invasion, and established space-based infrastructure that suggested significant manufacturing capabilities. "They don't need our protection," Trell continued. "They don't need our resources. They don't need our technology. They want to join the council because they believe in the principles of peaceful cooperation that we represent." The voting process took 3 days. Emergency committees were formed to create new classification protocols. Xenobiologists worked around the clock to understand the implications of deathworld evolution. Military strategists calculated defensive scenarios that had never been necessary in galactic history. In the end, the vote was unanimous, but it created a new classification that would exist for only one species. "By council decree," the speaker announced, "humanity is granted membership under the unprecedented classification of Deathworld natives. Their role will be that of problem solvers for situations deemed too dangerous for standard military forces." The decision was communicated to Earth through diplomatic channels. Dr. Yuki's response was brief and characteristically human. "We're honored to serve. What do you need us to handle first?" The answer came within days. A pirate confederation had been terrorizing 3 sectors of the galaxy for decades, targeting merchant vessels and establishing bases on uninhabitable worlds that council forces couldn't approach safely. Previous attempts to resolve the situation had resulted in significant casualties and mission failures. Trell watched from the Council observation deck as human marine transports departed Earth orbit, carrying volunteers who had requested assignment to their first galactic peacekeeping mission. The ships disappeared into faster-than-light travel, heading toward a problem that had defied solution for 30 years. "Do you think they'll succeed?" asked his assistant, still processing the unprecedented nature of what they had witnessed. Trell considered the question while reviewing his notes from the past months. He thought about humans crawling through mud under explosions, celebrating challenges that would destroy other species, and volunteering for experiences that qualified as torture by galactic standards. "The pirates have no idea what's coming, for them," he replied quietly. "They're about to discover what happens when apex predators decide you're a problem that needs solving." 3 weeks later, the Pirate Confederation surrendered unconditionally. The human Marines had accomplished in days what Council forces had failed to achieve in decades. Their methods remained classified, but the results spoke for themselves. As reports filtered back from the operation, Trell realized that the galaxy's greatest potential threat had become its most effective protector. The same evolutionary pressures that had created a species of natural warriors had also created a species with an unshakable commitment to protecting those who couldn't protect themselves. Humanity had joined the Galactic Council not as conquerors, but as guardians. The universe had just become a much safer place for peaceful civilizations. Everywhere,